अनिष्टमिष्टम मिश्रम च त्रिविधम कर्मणः फलम भवत्य त्यागिनां प्रेत्य न तु सन्यासिनां क्वचित्. The major difference, because yesterday we just spoke about anishtam, ishtam, mishram, we did not move forward to the next part of the shloka. You were speaking for about 40 minutes on that. We thought you completed the shloka. So the second half of the shloka says, Bhavatya tyaginam pretya natu sannyasinam kvachit. So before I explain this, how many of you have gone through an education system wherein you have a bachelor's degree? Participate. I was like, what happened? Okay. Master's degree? Doctorate? Oh, your other half and you. Postdoc. So you are all well educated. Almost 96% have raised even for masters. Those 2 or 3 who have not, you can take an honorary master's certificate. You are master of the house. So Swamiji, who are you talking about? The women or men? As you please. I don't want to get into that. So you have done enough study. So my questions are, so I just made a preliminary arrangement or preliminary question. So I know that the question is not invalid. So while studying, have you all studied about atoms? Right? You all have studied about atoms. Whatever stream of education that you have been, you would have been introduced when you were in probably 7th, 8th grade. And then if you have picked on sciences, then you would have done further studies on the atoms and subatomic particles, nucleus and further. Has anyone seen an atom? Not printed on paper, actual. Yes, no, all right.
On television. On television. When we have that.
Oh, that is a seeming model which is presented. Have you seen?
No.
There are methods to see it. It is not just a hypothesis. There are very powerful microscopes through which they have seen. They have seen even the nucleus. Has anyone in this gathering seen? Neither have. I have also not seen. You know where I am taking this logic to, right?
No.
Okay. Fall along with me. Not follow along. Fall along with me in the logic. When we talk about religion, when we talk about the religious practices, beliefs and tenets, we suddenly proclaim to be unusually very scientific. And for every small little detail, the first thing that we ask, where is the proof? Can you show it to me? Because that one question can put brakes on any logical approach. So my question to you is, though you call yourself to be scientific, you have read through books and you come to believe. I am not a person who has blind belief. Yada, yada, yada. This is statements. When we make statements, I'm just analyzing our standpoints or the hypocrisy behind the standpoints. When we say we are scientific and we say that we need proof, and when we claim that in our own scientific approach, we believe only in those which we have proof for, that you have witnessed, you have seen, you vouch for. I'm sure in the name of religion, when there is a discussion tending towards argument, one of the biggest blocks that comes around is, where is the proof? So now, all of the scientific mindset people, when you have to be fair enough, right? In this field, however you have been fair, same has to be applied equally. And we also say that I'm not a blind believer. The entire science that which you vouch for and being scientific, there are so many aspects that can be taken. One simple concept that I have taken is of the atoms and the subatomic particles. Have you seen? You have just studied. In those thick books, volumes, you have studied. That is the only proof that you have. Am I exaggerating?
No.
The rest of you, please. I am not exaggerating, right? Is that what we call as being firm in science, not based on belief? Yes or no?
Yes.
And to a certain extent, blindly accepted as facts, without a personal tinge of experience in it? Why don't you cut the same slack for religion and religious practices? And then maybe once you start practicing, you will see what they are vouching for. Suddenly when we come to a spiritual environment, we become super scientific and say, where is the proof? I need proof. I will not believe anything which is bakwas band karo. I cannot translate that into English. Sorry. If I put an attempt to it, it will not have the oomph in it. It will like, stop your nonsense. It is hypocrisy. With the same openness that which we get into science to take it on accepted belief system, I know you are very in deep thinking. This is an entrapment today that he has laid down for us. How did we fall prey to? That's why I said, don't follow along, fall along with me. And you are seriously thinking, how do you counter-attack me? We believe because there were scientists who have done the experiments and they have seen. Have you seen? It still is a fact that you have not seen, but some XYZ has seen it and they have documented it, and you believe in that documentation. Again, to be fair with all of you, just because I have mic and I have decibel levels, am I exaggerating it?
No.
Am I doing fair analysis?
Yes.
That you believe in a scientist, you believe in those lineage of scientists who have done enough research with the openness that there is a scope for improving on what they have found. And it has constantly been evolving, and you believe in spite of the fact that it is evolving. What they make a statement and one day they change in the next day. It is not a permanent thing, but you still have very firm belief in it. Such inconsistency in belief system is what I call them as neo-intellectuals. That we are not uniform in our application of intelligence. That where it is convenient, you accept it and believe. That which is not convenient, therefore you want to question it and throw it away. Then you start making it a. Let us not be hypocritical. At least from this standpoint, can I request all of you to come to a spiritual environment with mind and hearts open, with a scope, with a chance that there is or there could be a possibility of what they are speaking, an ounce of truth in it. You know, there are two kinds of people even in this gathering. That is why we have come here, Maswami. And those of you who have more than smiled were the ones who are probably thinking that right now. And then the rest of them, they are the ones who even question it. I am studying it, there must be some pointers for me to learn, but you stretch it too far, then I may disbelieve in whatever you are saying. I am trying to appeal to those mindsets as well. Have I made a fair enough pitch for having an open mind to a possibility that there is an ounce of truth being said? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
So I am asking your responses almost at a gunpoint. I don't carry a gun though I am from Texas. But our disparity in the so-called scientific approach, has it been made evident that our standpoints are not fair? why did I pitch so much on this line? As we believe in the scientists who have experienced it, who have documented it, here Bhagavan Krishna himself, with his experience and wisdom, he is making a statement. And what is the statement that he is making? He is saying, Bhavatya Tyaginam Pretya. A Tyagi still continues to have the three, Anishtam, Ishtam, Mishram, favorable, unfavorable, and a mixed kind of a result, and they yearn for, though they have given up, but their efforts have been put in an intent to have those kinds of results. They, when they leave this world, they tend to come back to this world again and again. Sannyasinam na kvachit. Those who have completely renounced, they do not come back into this samsara again. For the Tyagi, it is punarapi jaranam, punarapi maranam. Why does it happen? What is the logic behind it? Whether it is favorable, unfavorable, or a mixed kind of a result that we anticipate, with all these results that we anticipate, it creates an environment of impressions within. As much as it creates an environment of results on the external level, it also carries the subtleties of those layers within one's own heart. These subtle impressions are called vasana. Vasana, they are the tendencies. Given a set of environment, and you take samples from various groups and allow them to experience that set of environment, each one acts, reacts, responds in a distinctly unique manner. Why? Because each one of us responds based on what the tendencies declare the direction to be. Whatever are the tendencies, how do these tendencies evolve? The tendencies percolate, the tendencies seep in to the system of mind and thinking, into the thought process as likes and dislikes. From these layers of likes and dislikes, the thought gets amplified into a desire. Both the thoughts of likes and dislikes are still desires. The desire to want something because I like, the desire to not want something because I don't like. Both are desires. If you are in an environment wherein you don't like that environment, what is a strong urge that is compelling you? When will I get out of this place? Doesn't it? Supposing you are sitting in a boring history class or an English class. Or a boring Vedanta class. Why? Let me take the honors on me. A boring Vedanta class, you are sitting. You're not liking the environment. So what do you want to do?
Leave.
There is a strong desire to leave. And that is also a desire. Desire to not want something because it is born out of dislike, that is also desire. Desires usually we define it as, oh, desires are all that which we like. No, that which we don't like also swells up as desire. So tendencies get amplified as likes and dislikes. Likes and dislikes swell up as desires, and these desires prompt us to act. Sequence is very simple. Tendencies or impressions inside become likes and dislikes. The likes and dislikes become desires, and the desires express as actions. If you make a very subtle note, even for the basic needs, say you want to get a glass of water, nothing more basic than just the water to quench our thirst. The first thought comes, let me have some water. And then each one of us, even in that simple water, we have qualifications, qualifiers. I don't like the tap water. I want the filtered water which comes through the refrigerator. I cannot take the warm water. And the kids who grow up here, it's like 30 outside. They'll fill the entire cup with ice and then fill it up with water and then drink that. And most of the restaurants that Indians go to, when they come and ask, what can I get you to drink? What is it that we say?
Water with ice.
Water with no ice, with maybe a piece of lemon in it. Water, no ice, lemon. If you make it in a sentence, that will be confusing. Water, no ice, lemon. It's a simple water, but even in those water, there are shades of differences of what each one likes. So that particular impression which compels you, okay, I think I am thirsty. Then it comes out as like and dislike. What kind of water do you want? Water is water, right? No, I want that kind of water. So you go through the garage by mistake into somebody's house, there will be like tons of bottles piled. Because this water or the filtered water, I don't trust it. Plus the taste is little weird. Wherever I go, this bottle maintains its consistency, the sweetness in it. There's a different touch of taste in it. I like that one. I take on a simple, whatever Sam's Club. Even in that Sam's Club, the aisle, water bottle aisle. How many are there brands? I'm talking to Walmart. At least 30-40 brands. I have to take you to the grocery store. She is not Walmart, it proves. There are different kinds of brands. Deja Blue, Aquafina, Smart Water. At least something is smart. Fruit flavored. And India? Bisleri. It's a simple water, and in that water we have choices and also the temperature and various things. So the likes and dislikes. The first thought of thirst came in and you don't jump up and go take a glass of water and drink. There's so much of processing happening. It appears as if it is happening all in quick succession, in couple of seconds. But behind that quick succession, there is so much of processing that is happening consistently with every action that we are performing. So much of mental energy is being dissipated on all these layers. So the thought processing, then you decide what is it that in that particular environment with your particular mood, what kind of water do you want? It is cold outside. I just came in. I feel some warm water with herbal tea. Again, choice, right? Soothing. Again, a choice. Then the likes and dislikes gets decided. Then that particular desire swells up. And that desire amplifies itself. That I need water. I need this kind of water. I need this kind of water, and that intensity to need that then finally propels you. Even in that, if you take different shades of intensity and it is not that intense, then you ask your son or daughter, say, "Beta, get me a glass of water." And whenever such instructions you call, it almost feels like gazillion times and there is no response. And then when you finally, the intensity of that thought, like I need water now. First was I need water, but now it is I need water now immediately. Nobody is responding, therefore you get up. So on the fly, that son or beta will say, "Dad, you anyway got up, get me also a glass of water." Behind that simple act of getting up and quenching your thirst, there's so much of processing happening. That there is an impression becomes likes and dislikes, the likes and dislikes become a desire, and the desire prompts us into that direction of action. That action, when you perform, leaves an impression again. For this particular talk, many of the volunteers put in a lot of effort to do mass publicity. I'll not name who, but before the sessions begin, I get a text. "Swamiji, we have put a lot of effort in gathering. We are sure to gather a lot of people. The rest now is in your hand. Make a good impression." Then after the talk is done, as I'm going to somebody's house for food, I think you have managed to find that first impression. In every experience, there is an impression that is created. Yeah, if you want to take a gross example, when you eat Indian food, they have got so much of masala in it. And most of us eat with our hands. So you go wash your hand, you washed it with some kind of soap, and even after having rinsed, wipe your hand and smell your hand. There will be a very slight tinge of the Vasana is a smell of that which you have just had. Even after washing with soap. At a gross level, it can leave impression. At a subtler level, imagine the impression. At least at a gross level, we wipe it clean, we are washing. Internally, we have never washed. Can you see the depth of impression that it is carving with every single effort that we put? So for every layer of our execution of actions, there are millions and millions of impressions that are created, some which are already there, which get reinforced. Therefore, we are with strong likes and dislikes, and based off of these strong likes and dislikes, there are strong opinions. A tyagi has on the external level given up the anticipation for the result, created a discipline to give up that. But the internal impression is yet to be given up. Whereas a sannyasi has already given up that identification with the impression. Therefore, does not have the scope, does not need another life to exhaust those existing vasanas. And how long do we continue? As long it takes to clean up that mess called vasana, layers of impressions that we have created. Now, even in the layers of impressions that get created in a very subtle manner, ishtam, there are some which are very sattvic ones which directly push. Even in choosing a path for peace and joy, that impression should be there. There are some who like, being on that edge extreme. What do you call them? Extreme sports. Jump off of a cliff with a bungee. Has anybody done that? Oh, good. So you know the adrenaline rush. Skydiving. Anybody? I have done all these things. I am asking from you. Two at least. All these extreme sports, being in that edge, sukha from that, not from peace, from extreme excessive involvement, a kind of a gush, thrill. Then there are those tamasic kind, wherein too much of exertion. Therefore, every evening come down and rigorously practice the discipline of liquid spirituality. Grapes are sattvic. Rotten grapes is tamasic. Somebody said more sattvic. Barley is actually a good cleansing agent. Rotten barley. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's tamasic. But the sukha is found there. Sham hote hi. Vaidyo Narayano Hari. And then the logic that they give for substantiating each one of these patterns, whether tamasic, rajasic or sattvic. Ishtam is the sattvic, anishtam is the tamasic, mishram is the rajasic. Different kinds of impressions that we create. How many Indians are there in Bentonville, Fayetteville, Rogers? The top of your mind, just as a
4,000?
Indian families, 4,000 Indian families.
No.
Families.
No.
Oh, number of Indians, 4,000. Of these 4,000, how many are Hindu?
3,500.
About 3,500, 3,700. A liberal figure. Of those 3,700, when an opportunity is given to understand Bhagavad Gita and discuss about it, how many choose this environment?
Like 50.
About 70, 80 people. Discounting those who have just come today, there may be 50 people. To come to this environment also, that kind of vasana should be created. So all these different impressions which are generated through various actions, they continue forward from one life to the other to the other. And that is where the logic of reincarnation makes complete sense. Does anybody have twins? Two? You are a twin? So yours will be an observation, yours will be a first-hand experience. So your other twin, you both look similar? But are you both, do you act, react, respond to every situation in the exact manner? Your likes and dislikes? Most of the things, they're different. Born in the same gene pool, if you go back to genetics and corner that fact that, oh, it's all genetics, why we choose where we are. Born in the same gene pool, born in the same environment, born in the same conditionings. That which comes out are two different individuals with two different perspectives and experiences in life. As a mother, your children, the twins, are they not two different? Very different. One is an introvert, the other is an extrovert. One likes spicy, the other likes sweet. If the mother by mistake makes an announcement, I am making potato sabji. One says make a fry, the other one says make a stew. From the gross to the subtle, all their likes and dislikes are different. Where are we getting these likes and dislikes from? The vasanas which we are carrying it forward from the earlier lives. What proof do you have? Bhagavan Krishna has said that is fine for me. I'll give it the benefit of doubt. It may be true because it makes logical sense. No, I need a proof. That's why I went through that elaborate process of science and validation through proofs. I've been given, logical inference has been given, that as a proof has been given. Well, it makes only sense that it continues. And the major question is, why don't I remember if it is my own life that I have lived? Why don't I remember my past? In the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Matta smritir jnanam apohanancha vedaischa sarvair ahameva vedyah. There Bhagavan says, 15th chapter we studied, right? You are all like, I don't know what he's talking about. That it is me, the consciousness, who enlivens every living being, and I express through that every living being as smritihi jnanam apohanancha. That I express as your memory. I express as your wisdom. And I also express as your lack of memory. Oh, this we should have learnt, Swamiji, when we got married. Now we can blame it on the Lord. When we come from and other half asks, did you do this? Bhagavan Krishna has said, Matta smritir jnanam apohanancha. The lack of memory is because of him. Don't blame me. No, he is not talking about this flimsy convenience called lack of memory. He is talking about a specific thing there. And what is that specific thing? The lack of memory of earlier lives. Now imagine that in this life, you are belonging to one particular village, one particular tradition, one particular culture, and there is a constant tussle or competition with the village on the other side of the river. Usually when you have grown up in the small towns and villages, there are always these competitions, and they cannot stand each other. Well, let's go a little global. There's a match coming tomorrow. What match am I talking about? Cricket match. No, in cricket match, what specific match am I talking about? India, Pakistan. Last time when there was World Cup and that India-Pakistan, was it quarters or semi-final? Semi-final match, and then it was being aired in the UTD, the University of Texas at Dallas, their auditorium. And there were cops all along the aisle. All immigrant students from Pakistan go on this side, all from India go on this side. You will, I'm not joking, I had gone. I was also invited, so I also had gone, seen the match. And every time there is, each other's wicket or each other's runs are being chased, and they'll start shouting slogans, and the announcement was, you can make all your shouting or whatever, you will not cross the aisles. And many were not even from the Indian continent, Indian subcontinent. Many were born and brought up here. And yet the passion, India team versus Pakistan team. This life, you are on whichever side that you are. And you have all your loyalties, and you have all your enthusiasm and fervor for that particular conditioning that you are growing up in. You die here and you are born there. And you tend to remember the previous life. Exactly. It is not just creepy, it is traumatic. Now, let alone this national fanatism. Now, in this life, you remember your father, mother, brothers, siblings, children, wife, husband. You remember all these relationships, friends, enemies. And then you are born 2 streets down the lane with the memory of your earlier life, of all the relationships. Where can you relate to?
I would have a very confused life.
Thank you, sir. For that exact very reason, Bhagavan said, face the music of your earlier life as your experience, but you need not remember the trauma of all the earlier past lives. Apohanancha, it has been sealed away from memory. There are some yogic techniques wherein you can look into the past. You can trail from one life to the other. One life itself is a burden. Why do you want to carry unnecessary other lives? If you want another proof, there is this book called Many Lives, Many Masters. This book is a documentation of a doctor, a psychiatrist who had learnt hypnotism, and he would perform something called hypnotic regression. His intent, when he stumbled upon this particular fact, his intent was to take them. He's an American, the mindset is the Western mindset. So he thought, with the hypnotic regression, I'll take them to the past experiences of this life, so that I can identify what exactly is creating the unrest and imbalance in this particular moment. Therefore, once you understand the cause, the solution can be found. But in his hypnotic regression, the patient that he first documented, he saw that he jumped 300 lives in his hypnosis. He had a severe abdominal pain. I'm just taking one example that he has documented. He had a severe abdominal pain, and physically the doctors have checked him thoroughly, and they could not identify the cause. And when he went to this, they thought he had some psychological problem. So they thought some medication would work. So he said, instead of medication, let me put you through this experimental hypnotic regression. And instead of jumping back few days, months or years, he jumped 300 lives. And in that life of his, he and his friend, they were in African community or African, what do you call them? Tribal community. And in that African tribal community, he and his friend had gone for hunting, and out of a fun gesture or something, the spear with which they were supposed to hunt, he poked the other fellow teasingly, but not realizing that it would end up, going into his stomach 300 lives ago. And because of that, every single life after that, he has been having the abdominal issues as the repercussion of his jovial act. He did not die, but then that pain was continued. I would suggest read that book. Somebody who does not believe in reincarnation stumbles upon, through the hypnotic regression, that there are these earlier lives because of which what we think and how we think is conditioned. I think I've spent enough time on this. Give it a possibility, a chance of possibility to think through that line before you condemn it and throw it away. That is what we do. We throw all this logic given. They say in Texas, don't throw the baby along with the bath waters. That's what we do. Because we are ignorant, and our ignorance is the proof. And then we say we need proof. Give it a possibility that there may be a chance, so that you could streamline your thinking and logically follow through. And you'll find that it is not a tall tale made, it is something which has validity in it. Think through it. Okay, the next shloka. Panchaitani Mahabaho Karana सांख्ये कृतान्ते प्रोक्तानि सिद्धये सर्वकर्मणाम्. Now he has spoken one logic. Now he is taking a different thought in again the field of karma. He says, Panchaitani Mahabaho Karanani Nibodhame. These 5 aspects, these 5 causes come together in accomplishing any action, in performing an action. This concept I have earlier spoken way back in the form of Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya philosophy, it was Kapila Deva or Kapila Mahamuni, not the cricketer. Kapila Mahamuni, he gave this knowledge to the grieving mother, his own mother, Devahuti. And that knowledge is called the Sankhya Shastra. And that Sankhya Shastra was quoted in which chapter? Thank you. In 10 questions, at least one question gets answered as a reference. So the second chapter, the entire second chapter is the crux, is the essence of the second chapter, is the essence of that Sankhya Yoga. So he says, Panchaitani Mahabaho Karanani Nibodhame. These 5 are the Karana, and I have spoken about them at length in the Sankhya Yoga. So he is referring to the Sankhya of Kapila Shastra, which he himself has referred in the second chapter. And what are these 5 components that are the cause for accomplishing an action? That is given in the 14th shloka. Repeat after me. See, when there is a shloka which has a depth to it, I may speak for an hour, 2 hours on it. But if it is just a reference, then I can just finish it up in less than a minute. Because I hear the chat on the grapevine. Who told me? A bird on the fence. Swamiji, we have 78 shlokas and 5 days. How many shlokas per day are you going to finish? I am not a batsman and these are not runs and I don't have a run rate to finish these many shlokas per day. I go by the number of themes that are there and to the content, to the best of the ability that the theme is demanding, the time shall be spent. So remove the thought from your thinking that how many more sessions will he take? However more sessions, does it really matter? I am the one who is putting the effort. You have to sit there and enjoy listening. If not, continue sleeping, whatever. So remove that thought. I don't know, it's the last day and he's still in 14th shloka. I will take out the hitter mode and finish the rest of the shloka. We'll go at our own pace. I'll go at my own pace. The point that we have to grasp is the content that is being spoken, is it arriving to a distinct clarity in our hearts? Whichever theme that we are taking. So moving forward in the 14th shloka. Adhishthanam tatha karta karanam cha prathak vidham vividhascha prathak cheshta daivam chaivatra panchamam. These groups of 5 are the ones, when they come together, the action can be accomplished, action can be performed. What are they? Adhishthanam. Adhishthanam, the platform. The platform is this body, human body. Karta. Karta, the doership, ego. Don't take this shloka directly into a realized person and how does this work. This is for the rest of us. So don't put it into that example and try to, unnecessarily strain your brain. This is for the rest of us and take it with that reference only. Am I clear? Karta, ego. Karanam. Karanam, different organs of perception, instruments of perception. What are the 5 instruments of perception?
Eyes, nose, mouth, ears.
And
Touch.
skin.
Next.
Touch is the capacity. Skin is the instrument through which we feel. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. These are the 5 organs of instruments of perception. Adhishthanam, the body. Karta, the ego, the doer. Karanam, just now we said 5 organs of perception. Vividhascha pruthak cheshtha. So here Gurudev has given the meaning as organs of action. There are variations, subtle variations. Adi Shankaracharya in his Bhashya says that the 5 pranas, pancha prana, both are connected. While explaining it, I will take you through the connection. Pruthak cheshta, daivam chaivatra pancham. And the 5th one is the force of elements, daivam. The enlivening devata, that because of which that particular organ functions in that field. We'll go through that aspect as well. Adhishthanam. Adhishthanam, the physical body is the platform through which we function. Do we function when the body is deeply withdrawn in deep sleep?
Yes. Yes. Our mind is doing what?
Because the involuntary organs are functioning, but all the voluntary organs are withdrawn. Even the mind is withdrawn in deep sleep. In the dream, the mind is awake. The mind is weaving out different themes. But to effectively interact with the physical world, we need to be associated with that physical body and function in this physical world. Physical body as a platform. Karta, the ego. Different shades of meanings of this ego was seen in a couple of shlokas earlier. Karanam, organs of perception. Pruthak cheshta. Cheshta, the various movements, meaning the organs of action. But all these organs of actions move because of the pancha prana. Do you sometimes by mistake perform pujas? Once in a while. Yes or no?
Yes.
No, Swamiji, we don't. We perform it regularly. If you perform it regularly, well and good. Once in a while, then you will know what I am talking about. If you have not performed, at least have you attended puja?
Yes.
Good. The most favorite step in puja is, or at least that was what I was a bhakta of growing up as a child. Prasada bhakti. That I was a bhakta of prasada. So growing up, when there was, we had a Shiva temple and a Vishnu temple in the neighborhood. And we seldom visited Shiva temple. Why? No incentive. You go to a Shiva temple, they give you water and bhasma as prasada. You go to a Vishnu temple. It is not just prasada, but every day of the week there is a different variety. One day there is sweet pongal, second day there is hot pongal, there is curd rice. Sometimes there is those vadas and different kinds, puliodare, the tamarind rice. Physical bhakti. So what we would do is every day there would be a arati at about 7 o'clock. So we would be playing till 6:55 in the grounds behind the temple. We would be playing whatever, cricket or something. And just as the last bell sound is weaning away, we would all, gather our bats, stumps, ball, everything and put them outside and remove our shoes and then go wash our hands and legs. And then, as the greatest bhakta, because our heights were also lower, so between the people and the legs we would go in there, right in the front. Right in the front, reach. And it had become a tradition. Because by the time it comes to the end, prasada reduces, depending on the number of people. In the beginning, you get handsome prasada. Tasty and handsome prasada, handsome size. So that is the best step. Now on a serious note. When the food is being offered to the Lord, it is called Naivedya, and the Naivedya, when it comes back, it is called Prasada. So while offering that Naivedya, if you have observed the priest, they chant. They chant. And they are offering, they say Swahakara. They are saying Swaha. All that is going in our mind is aha. Looking at all the Naivedya there. The mouth is already watering. So what are the Swahakaras made for? There is a Swaha uttered during that particular. You chant Gayatri mantra. Om Bhurvaswaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. And then you sprinkle water, and then you circle the water around that food 3 times. Satyam Tvaratena Parishinchami Amadamasya Amatopastaranamasa Swaha. Then you repeat 6 times Swaha. What do you say? Pranaya Swaha. Together we stand as one family. That is Chinmay Mission pledge. Come on. Together, if we put our heads together, we will make all 5 together.
Okay.
Okay, it sounds like a good game. Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, Samana. 5 pranas are mentioned. These 5 pranas are the air that we breathe in. For a longest time, in my own investigation, in my own understanding, it never made sense. I am offering it to the Lord. Why am I not saying Krishnaya Swaha? Why am I saying Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, Samana? There is some logic, right? Our rishis were not fools that they just made a sequence just to keep us occupied. Anyway, we don't listen to anybody anytime, at least during the puja. Get up, you get up, sit down, you sit down, roll, you roll. So they said Prana, Apana, Swaha. No, there was a reason. And what is the reason? Why do they specifically say these 5?
In that order.
Yeah, in that order also. It is because the prana that goes in, the life breath that goes in, physiologically, all the activities are done by this prana shakti. The air that goes in, the life breath, is called prana. The oxygenated air that goes in is called prana. After having filtered out all the oxygen, that which is not required by the body, we breathe out, right? That which is exhaled out is called apana. Not just that, anything that which does not belong to the system of this body. There are these poets who have described their beloved's beauty. The hair and the eyes and the नीली सी झीली आंखें, कोई राज है इनमें गहरा ता. I'm just mentioning one of the poet's expression there. So they have described such beautiful eyelashes.
No.
Have you seen this Mickey Donald or Tom and Jerry and such series? So there is this lady or a girl, Mickey. Minnie, हाँ, बहुत साल हो गया देख. Minnie Mouse, and then she stands in the balcony. And all these heart-shaped balloons are flying all over the place. And then she stands with a crossed leg leaning over that and then looks at this Mickey and then the eyelashes. And he is also like trancing and then goes and hits a lamppost. The eyelashes are described as a beautiful part of your eyes. As long as they are a part of our body, they give beauty to that part of the body. For whatever reason, the eyelashes have done their job and it separates itself from, I'm not talking of your other technique of pulling things out. It falls by itself. It falls by itself and sometimes it ends up landing in your own eye. Does the eye say? Do the eyes say, the poor thing has, protected me so much. Let him linger around in my eye for a while.
So he's like, get out.
Exactly. Mercilessly. And how does the eye react at that point? That it starts swelling out all the water, and through the water it tries to flush out because it is no more belonging to the system. You're working in some carpentry or something and there's a little piece of wood, a little splinter that goes into your hand. You thought you have pulled out everything. But in a day or two, you see that there is a small white circle around it. The body is reacting to that foreign particle inside that you don't belong here and you will be pushed out. that which enables, that physiological aspect which enables the body to spit out all that which does not belong to the system is called apana. When people have digestive issues and metabolism issues, or to put it in a simple word, constipation issues, their apana vayu is not working. Because as much as we focus on input, output also should be regular. And that is also called apana. Because it is no more required by the body, that is thrown out. That is called apana. That which is not required by the body is thrown out of the system. That aspect of prana, that air that we breathe in, which helps remove all the unnecessary aspects from the body, is called apana. Say suddenly you went to a dinner somewhere and you ate something and it did not go well with you. And you throw up. There is a little, very flimsy, thin layer, it is called a diaphragm, which is right under the pit of the stomach. It goes in a certain rhythm. And that is also the cause for, when it moves in an opposite rhythm, is when we get hiccups. So what does it do? It's like the string of the bow and arrow. It pulls itself all the way, and then, like the penalty stroke into the goal, right? So it kicks at the bottom of the pit of the stomach, and then because the body knows that it cannot, it is something that is going to disturb the system, and the body cannot handle it, therefore it throws out. That aspect of prana which makes sure that everything is, that which does not gel well with the body or the system is kicked out, is called apana. That's also physiological activity. Prana, apana, vyana. All that we eat goes into the pit of the stomach. Right? The calcium is required by the bones. The amino acids are required by the so-called, if there exists a brain. It has to go there. What makes sure that all this is transported to different parts to maintain them? Not just that. Do you know how the cellular work happens, right? In the cell, how does the combustion happen? Is the air, the oxygen goes through, and that part of the body where it requires to give that energy, it burns that cell, releasing out energy. To transport this oxygen, which part of the body is functioning maximum, the oxygen goes to that part, and that transport system. To understand Vyana, van is transportation, right? Vyana, that which transports all these. That is why if you have observed, soon after lunch or dinner, when Madhya Pradesh is full, how fresh is your Uttar Pradesh? I think I need a cup of coffee. Why? As soon as food goes into the pit of the stomach, all the energy is diverted towards stomach. In fact, the yogasanas, they say, by logic, you should not be doing yogasana after eating food. But there is only one permitted asana, which is called Vajrasana. Virasana is different. Vajrasana. Vajrasana is you sit on your knees and then, so what happens? All the energy that can be leaked or going towards anything lower than the stomach is curtailed, and it is redirected towards stomach, therefore thereby enhancing the digestive power. So who is it that regulates it and gets the energy? That is the Vyana. And then, by the time you cross 40, you have these multiple colored, they are no more M&Ms, but they are multicolored tablets, breakfast, lunch, dinner. One for diabetes, one for hypertension, one for thinners, one for, I don't know, a bunch of it you consume. Again, that medicine is all going into the pit of the stomach. How does the stomach know to send which medicine to which part? Dhyana is the one which distributes. The distributing agency is Vyana. Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana. Udana is a very subtle aspect of the air which creates an environment where it releases endorphins. It creates an inspiring environment within. And it is in this Udana Vayu which creates this brilliant thoughts. Now, sometimes we have this brilliant thought, we surprise ourselves. I also can think like this. And you tell it to your spouse, who said this? I! Come on, stop joking. So by mistake, Udana Vayu has gone in the right direction. And that inspired moments, inspired thought, inspired breakthroughs are created for those who have their Udana Vayu sharpened. And in the pranayama techniques of the Ashtanga Yoga, each one of them is specifically, there are exercises to channelize them. In the ancient Ayurvedic science, they would not have stethoscopes or various other gadgets, but all that they would do is hold your nadi, the pulse. There are 3 nadis here, and they, by reading that pulse, can tell which aspect of prana is not working and where is it impacting at a physical level, and that impact is creating an imbalance. So they would decipher that. Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana. And the final one is called Samana. What is the temperature outside? 9 degrees Celsius. 9 degrees? I have not come prepared for that. Okay, 9 degrees Celsius. It's cold. 57?
27.
No. 9 should be somewhere in 40s.
This is 40 Fahrenheit answer.
Fahrenheit 40 something. So you step outside here, do you feel even a shaft of cold air?
No.
So you're all warm, cozy, that you have taken out all your heavy jackets and other things, put them aside.
Yes.
And as you step outside, it is suddenly cold. And that is why we should not be stupid in abusing the body to maintain a coolness factor. That if it is cold, wear something warm. Don't give trauma to the body. And you wear just a thin t-shirt and a shorts, and then say you go all like this and oh, I'm good. I feel like giving them a towel. It's a kapde pehno. Bewakoof. Now what happens? The body, while it is here, has to generate a cooling impact to match with the warmth that is being provided. When we step outside, it is suddenly cold and it has to switch gears. Switch gears in providing heat because outside it is cold. So the human thermostat is the nostrils. I used to always wonder, why did God create in His genius creation nose. What is the purpose of it? Because a blunt 2 holes would have also been sufficient to smell. The shape of it regulates. So you may observe during different times of day and night, one part of the nostril is functioning. This side is called Ida and this side is called Pingala. So these are the names of the nadis or the streams of the nostrils, Ida and Pingala. When the left is closed and the right is open, it generates heat. When the right is closed and the left is open, it creates the cooling effect. And they say wake up during the Brahma Muhurta Kala. Brahma Muhurta Kala is 4 o'clock and later 4 o'clock AM. Oh, 4 PM. I can wake up. 4 AM. So Brahma Muhurta Kala, you wake up. That is the time when the positive ions in the environment help both nostrils open. And at that time when you do your pranayama, sadhana and yoga or your japa, dhyana, because it creates, the environment is already natural for creating that balance inside and outside, it is the best time for performing sadhana. And because this logic was not given by our parents or whoever it was that we asked questions, therefore we thought it to be a torture system. Wake up early in the morning and study. But why? I seem to work the best in the night. You are not a night watchman. In the morning at 4 o'clock when you wake up, the system is more natural to that balanced state because both nostrils are functioning. And it creates that balance within Ida and Pingala. Right is the Surya Nadi. Surya, heat. The left is Chandra Nadi. Chandra Nadi, that which cools. The Nadi of a moon. So Samana, it is that aspect of air that we breathe in which creates balance, which maintains balance. Balance of both heat and pressure. When you are flying, as soon as you reach to a certain altitude, your ears pop. When you go up, it pops. When you are coming down, it starts clogging. So you automatically are trying to yawn. Why? The ears are blocked. You are trying to open them up. Samana, the pressure and the temperature. A normal human body should be at what pressure? Something by something, right? 120 by 80. Average. Normal human being. 120 by 80. So we do so many things. The impact of it can change the pressure. Like for example, you are having hot soup. And then as the body, the stomach is acclimatizing itself to accommodate for the heat of that soup, you suddenly pour in ice cold water. Now the stomach is getting confused message. Hey, do you want me to heat it up or cool it down? What exactly are you throwing in? Therefore in the Yoga Shastra it is said that while you are eating food, do not drink water. You can take a sip here and there, but do not confuse the system. See how much they have analyzed at depth. And most of it has been given into our tradition as do's and don'ts. Neither our parents nor their parents knew why. But they followed it, and that is why they were 90 knockouts. They had longevity. And for us, everything is, our ignorance is the proof. Therefore, all the system is thrown out. And now everybody is coming back to the basics. There was a time when all the village would eat was brown rice. And then I said, gee, brown rice, I have white rice. A polished rice. There are many kids who don't know that rice, when it comes out of the field, is actually brown in color. It has to be polished to get it into white color. Now everybody, you go there to a restaurant and say, brown or white? I'll have brown. I'm trying to be healthy. Now it has become a fashion statement. These are the basics. Go back to the natural existence. Samana, what does it do? It maintains that balance of heat, balance of pressure. You are sitting in an airplane. You are actually closing your eyes, but you can gauge, you can guess what direction the flight is going. I'm not talking of north, east, west, south. Whether it is tilting, whether it is balanced, you can feel it. Up and down, you can feel it. How do you feel it?
Gravity.
Gravity may be the final reason, but there is an internal ear. And through that internal ear, it is this Samana Vayu which gathers the information to maintain things in balance. The most physical aspect of this Samana Vayu is we walk. How many of you have an introduction to robotics? Like with your children when they do project, at least that way. So to make a machine function, to move from point A to point B designated, there's so many different aspects that have to go into calculation. For this system to move from point A to point B, like as we go out, we have to climb the steps, to remove the door, open the door and then walk out and then get off the curb and then walk. While doing all these things, at every single step, are we making a thorough calculation? This is the inclination of the stair, and the step is about 3/4 foot, and it is about half foot in width. So my feet have to land in this angle with this. Are you doing that calculation?
No.
It's automatically happening. That we are walking with ease, we can run with ease, we jump with ease. Sometimes we trip, and while falling we try to balance and regain that balance. And what is that creates that balance? It is this Samana Vayu which helps in the physiological activity. I'm just giving you various examples. If I have to speak, I can speak on this particular Pancha Prana for about 8 days. With each nitty-gritty detail of each prana. But you get the picture, right?
Yes.
And because these Pancha Prana does these physiological activities, burning up energy, therefore hunger and thirst occur. And in that particular step, when Pranaya Swaha, Apanaya Swaha, the Naivedya is being offered, it is directly offered to the pranas because of whose movement we have hunger and thirst. Does it make sense? Therefore it is fed to those pranas. And because of those pranas constantly moving, physically the organs of action function in their field. Vividhascha prathak cheshta. Daivam chaivatra panchamam. And what is the fifth one? The fifth aspect is the various natural forces because of which that particular organ of perception functions. Some people have eyes but cannot see. Genetically they are born blind. They have the instrument of ear, the shape, everything, but they cannot hear. They have tongue, they have everything, but they cannot speak. So they say that there has to be this devata or this aspect of the five element which has to enliven each one of these five organs of perception. The eyes are presided by fire. So when you chant the dhyana shlokas, whichever deity that you chant, usually the eyes are described as Surya Chandra Ucha Netre. The eyes are described as the Surya Chandra, that which is the aspect of fire. Because of that, we see. It is presided. Ears by space. We are not talking in between ears. That may also be a fact, but no. In between ears is vacuum, but ears function. Sound travels in space, not in vacuum. And it is that space which kind of enlivens the ears. The tongue by the water. See, when we have high fevers, anything that you eat tastes like dirt. Why? Because your taste buds, because of the heat generated, taste buds have gone dry. Therefore, anything that you put, you cannot taste it, so that it appears tasteless. Do this experiment, but make sure that you have closed your bathroom doors. Take a wad of tissue paper, paper towel. Go into the bathroom. Pull your tongue out. Press the tissue paper, or the towel or whatever on your tongue, so that maximum sapidity is taken out. Then have samples of sugar, salt and lemon. Throw them on your tongue. You will not be able to instantly identify what has been thrown onto the tongue because there is no water. That sapidity is what enables the tongue to taste everything specifically. So the tongue is enlivened by the water aspect. The skin is enlivened by air. That is why when people, those who are claustrophobic, do this experiment. The reason people get claustrophobic is, in that little space, there is no air circulating. It is not the length and breadth and width and height. It is a circulation of air. So wherever they feel claustrophobic, you provide good movement of air. That's why whenever they feel claustrophobic, what do they say? They have to come out into the open and breathe. So the movement of air is what removes that phobia. Because the skin is enlivened by the Vayu Devata. And the nose is by the element earth. Amazing is the creation. The same piece of soil, you sow different kinds of seeds. And when they blossom into plants and yield flowers and fruits, each plant drawing from the same earth gives out different fragrances. And all that smell is the Bhutattva. Without that Bhutattva, there cannot be smell. So the smell is enlivened, or the nostrils are enlivened by the earth aspect. So with these five, we function through thought, word and deed in interaction with this world outside. There's so much of permutations and combinations of all these different layers coming together for the act to be performed. And the stupid ego finally claims, I did it. There are so many subtler aspects that come into picture for that act to be executed. You by yourself cannot be doing anything. That is how beautiful this whole creation and the interaction with this creation is. That is why we have to grow subtler and subtler to experience all these layers consciously. The further from the 15th shloka, please remember. We will see it in our next sitting. But you will not have any further doubts about the Pancha Pranas. Have you understood the Pancha Pranas as to why the food is offered to the pranas? It is recorded, go back home and listen to it. And if you still don't understand, repeat it again and listen to it again. We will conclude with the Shanti Patha and then we will have the Yajna Prasada. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.